Alright, man, peace. So, brothers, a few months ago, I released a video called Do Multiracial People Have Identity Issues Volume 1, starring Stephen Curry and Ayesha Curry. And it was in the midst of a myriad of narratives that the media was putting forth revolving around Ayesha Curry and some of her quote-unquote controversial statements, as well as Stephen Curry's attempts to defend his wife, so on and so forth. And basically what I was addressing in that video is the understanding that I've always had pertaining to multi-ethnic or multiracial people, that they tend to try to compensate for their own confusion about their origins by pushing their own erroneous beliefs on others, especially demographics that they wished they belonged to with a sense of certainty. What I mean by that is this. Many times you'll have people who are quote unquote half black, half white, or who have parents that are multi-ethnic, and they'll choose a certain race or ethnicity that they want to belong to, usually the so-called black race, and try to push a lot of the more ardent beliefs or ardent stereotypical beliefs that they believe black people will want to hear, so that they'll not only be accepted, but be accepted as leaders. It's normally not enough for biracial or multi-ethnic people who are suffering from identity or placement issues to just be a member of the mob or the masses. They normally want to be at the front of the line. And I've stated this in other videos. Biracial people cannot lead so-called black people. Our people, as it is, already have too many issues regarding our origins and where we should be going to have people who tend to be inherently confused try to grab the reins and control where this horse is going to go. We just can't have that. It's very much akin to how the modern day mega feminists or super liberal females will try to dictate to men what manhood is. The reason why they do that is because they want to be men. They'll never be a man, so they want to try to define to actual men what manhood is. So volume 2 of this series is going to be featuring Mr. Colin Kaepernick, as well as Mr. Kenny Stills, and also Nessa Diab. And I've done videos on Nessa Diab and her murky origins, especially regarding her associations with Colin Kaepernick in the past, as well as my belief that she is his MK handler. That is very, very rampant in the entertainment industry, believe it or not. As I've told you, brothers, also, most of these top level athletes, at least the ones who are Monarch programmed or who are MK assets as athletes in the entertainment industry, their wives are their handlers. I've also told you that in my view, Stephen Curry's wife is his handler. So we're just going to address this issue and certain motifs that are prevalent regarding the Colin Kaepernick narrative, especially pertaining to the promotion of biracial people trying to dictate to so-called blacks, especially over social media, what they should be upset by. And I also think that there's a direct correlation between that and another concept that I've touched on intermittently on this channel pertaining to super liberal Caucasians telling so-called black people how to think about social issues. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
I think from a player perspective, he absolutely should be in the league. But the reasons are out there as to why he's not.
And for certain brothers who are listening to this video, the backdrop is they're asking the question of whether or not it would be smart for the NFL to give Kaepernick another chance. I don't think that smartness or intelligence is going to have anything to do with it. I do believe that there is a chance that within the Kaepernick narrative or storyline, they're going to try to establish closure for Kaepernick and his cult in one of two ways. Either they're going to allow Jay-Z to be the face of Colin's return to the NFL, thereby re-ingratiating Jay-Z with the woke contingent on the internet, as well as satisfying the social media revolutionaries, the internet revolutionaries in that way, or they're going to bump Colin Kaepernick off. That would not shock me at all. Of course, everything that I'm saying is just my perspective on it, but that's normally how they close out narratives like this.
We think about Colin Kaepernick, and the best way for him to re-enter the league is to go to a familiar environment, meaning a coach that knows him, someone that knows his talents, and a scheme that will allow him to do his thing. There's only one place that does that. Baltimore.
While we all know that they've already tried to give him the opportunity to play in Baltimore, Nessa Diab blew it because, as I've already stated, I don't believe that they really want to come back and play. I think that Colin Kaepernick is very comfortable in his new role as an actor, behind the scenes acting as an agitator and a constant irritant to the NFL. He really is the precursor to Jay-Z. I do believe that Jay-Z's portion of the script was already pre-written, that he would act as the savior and basically the plug between the NFL and Jay-Z's corporate sponsors working behind the curtain, the cultural Marxist billionaires from overseas who want to use the NFL as a 0 point to socially engineer society and get everyone to accept quote-unquote equality, that being the embracing of Luciferian principles.
Think about John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, they can speak. Greg Roman being the offensive coordinator, they've done it. And the fact that John Harbaugh is on record saying they want to revolutionize the NFL with the offense they're creating, well, they now have an opportunity to do that because with Lamar Jackson, they have RG3. They brought Trace McSorley in. If RG3 is out, you can say that Colin Kaepernick is a serviceable quarterback too. Now you're able to bring him in and allow him to do what he's always done.
The problem with Baltimore is they've been down that road already. And then Nessa and his trio, the trio of them, they put the picture out of Django as him as a slave owner, Ray Lewis as a slave. Like, that's what's so crazy about this.
Once again, they're playing out a ritual. Colin Kaepernick is playing a Sar. Nessa is a Set. Eric Reed is Heru. He's the agent of chaos. He's the god of mischief. He's back into the NFL. Do not underestimate Eric Reed's role in all of this. It's extremely pivotal. He acts as a counterbalance to the silence of Kaepernick. Remember, Harpocrates, or Heru the Child, was known as the quote-unquote god of silence. Kaepernick, in my view, is playing a Sar. Eric Reed gets to exhibit the traits of the alternate aspect of Heru, as the quote-unquote god of mischief. He's also the light bringer or the light bearer. He gets to run his mouth in front of the reporters. And Ness Nitty, once again, is a Set. For those of you who might not grasp what I'm talking about, I did a video about Colin Kaepernick and Nessa Diab or Ness Nitty, and I showed you a series of images that conveyed, or at least should convey, the understanding that Ness Nitty is a lot more than what she's depicted as. She's not just some radio DJ or radio VJ. She has always surrounded herself with a lot of esoteric imagery. And please understand that prior to her dating Colin Kaepernick, she was quote-unquote dating one of his teammates, Aldon Smith, a player who himself has ties to Luciferianism and had a series of psychological breakdowns before no longer being in the NFL. So it's very obvious to me that Ness Nitty targeted Colin Kaepernick and understood that he was a, what you call a Manchurian candidate or a sleeper agent that she had to activate. I'm sure that it sounds very far-fetched. It's okay. But it's my job to address the three-dimensional aspect of this whole narrative because most people either can't or they won't.
So I keep highlighting that. And it's amazing that, you know, and I call them the trio because I don't like to go through all the stuff. But when you're really effective...
And notice this brother calls them the trio. Once again, the quote-unquote Great Trinity or Divine Trinity is the Father God, the Mother Goddess, and their Son.
By what they're standing for. And I know that not all of them were affected by this in their upbringings and real adversity.
None of them were. I said this already. Colin Kaepernick is a mixed breed dude who's trying to compensate for his own racial obscurity by projecting himself out there. And that's just based on the basic understanding of some of the psychoses that plague multiracial people. And Ness Nitty is not even a so-called black woman. It amazes me that these woke niggas on the internet will allow her to dictate to them exactly what the protocol of quote-unquote revolution is supposed to be. And this chick ain't even black. But let me guess, because she got a fat ass and big titties, she could tell you what to do, right? Give me a break.
You can see through it. It's so nuanced, and they're not being sophisticated with this.
Because it's a narrative, it's not real, brother. That's why.
Have an opportunity to be in the NFL and to still parlay that into the empowerment for your message and in your employment like Eric Reed. Why don't you do this the professional way?
Because it's not their job to find solutions. Just in general, it's not the job of woke people to find solutions. And that's why I correlate this with the concept of cultural Marxism. Within cultural Marxism or Leninism, there's always going to be a sphere for professional rabble-rousers, professional protesters, perpetual protesters, people who really don't have a plan. Their job is just to bring as much anarchy and chaos as possible.
And I think that they think that protest means you gotta be mad. You can still be mad, but also work towards a better place for those who are really affected, not just through you as some kind of gatekeeper from a foot.
Well, he was set up as a gatekeeper by his sponsors. He failed, so now the new gatekeeper is going to be Jay-Z.
Perspective. Isn't that the worst thing that could happen for Lamar Jackson? Because right now they're basically building everything around the idea that he is the future of the franchise. As soon as you bring in Colin Kaepernick and Lamar Jackson has a couple of bad games, which every second-year quarterback this year will have, everybody's going to start beating the Colin Kaepernick needs to be the backup quarterback coming in. And there's going to be more intense pressure, I think, on that situation because Kaepernick's so much more famous than your average backup quarterback. I think that's a tough spot to ask Lamar Jackson to be a part of.
Right, but Colin Kaepernick does not care about that. He worships himself, and Eric Reid worships him. So he would have no problem coming to Baltimore and potentially taking Lamar Jackson's job. Remember, they were trying to angle towards having him take Cam Newton's job out there in Carolina. That's why Cam Newton, behind the scenes, did not even want Eric Reid there, because he read the tea leaves and realized that whoever it is who's backing Kaepernick wants him to have a starting job. Not just a job, but a starting job.
As we talk this through, one of the things I think about is like, I'm not sure if he's willing to sacrifice anything to get back into the NFL.
The only way that he will sacrifice anything, Whitlock, is if it's in his script. If it's been scripted for him to sacrifice anything or to be sacrificed, that's the only way that it's going to happen. He's an actor. He's here to perform and to hopefully guide the minds of the people who believe in him.
If he doesn't come back.
For his overall brand, for whatever this is, less is more, which has really been his mantra. He's not saying much. He's letting everyone else speak for him.
Yes.
And that's part of what this is. That's why I said, will he do the grind? Will he be in a third on the depth chart day one somewhere? Will you be that guy?
Absolutely not. Why would he? He's too big for that right now.
No, because it does take all of that. Are you humble enough to say, I'll come in and do whatever? Will I come in as the number 3 and prove myself playing with the 3s in preseason games when you've always been a 1?
Kaepernick's cult, which includes the mainstream liberal sports media, have already crafted him as the ultimate martyr and victim. So how would it look that a team brings him in and has him playing with the third team and expects him to actually have to work to start again? When Kaepernick last was in the NFL, he was barely a capable starter. He was able to put up nice looking numbers, but he could not lead his team to wins or victories. And prior to that, he was on his way out of the NFL before he embraced this fake ass Huey P. Newton persona. It's all a facade. So no, he's not going to work from the bottom up.
If he comes back and he doesn't perform very well or he never becomes a starter anymore, his story is over. Because people are going to say, you know what, the 3 years that he didn't play,
his story will only be over when his sponsors want his story to be over. He's completely controlled.
Very good. He wasn't good enough in order to...
I mean, once again, look at how they depict him. I don't understand how people can't see this. They have this dude come back with a huge afro dressed in all black. They want you to associate him with Huey P. Newton. I don't get why cats can't grasp this. He's a cartoon character. He has to wear t-shirts with Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali on them or dress in all black. He's in character.
Up. He needs to come back and he needs to win. If he's just an average backup in the NFL, his power is over as a political force.
Great point.
I'm going to flip because I originally, I think I started this conversation like, well, maybe there's some upside to bringing him into the tent. As I think this through and we talk, I don't see the upside just because I don't think his goal really is playing football.
I agree.
Of course it's not. His goal is to promote chaos and anarchy. They believe in the concept of order out of chaos. He's a far more value behind the curtain, behind the scenes. That's why he doesn't speak and he doesn't engage. He's the proverbial Wizard of Oz of the sports world. Remember, in the film Wizard of Oz, the wizard established awe amongst all of the people of Oz because he utilized mystery and misdirection. It's the same concept for Colin Kaepernick. And Oz is meant to be an allusion to Asar or Osiris. That's why I state Colin Kaepernick is playing the role of proverbial Asar or Osiris, the hidden god, aka Amun-Ra.
Or he would make a few little other decisions. And I'm not even talking about sacrificing, giving up, taking a knee. You take a knee, talk, come out publicly, defend your position.
He can't do that. He has no position. His only position is on his knees, just like his followers, because he's a servant, just like his followers, because he really worships He's super liberal Caucasian. Just like his followers do, the so-called pro-blacks, they worship super liberal Caucasians. That's why they want that hug and that kiss on the forehead from them.
Know yourself to be a leader. Quiet the noise around you from the people connected to you. Just do that. Show me that you're willing to say, hey, listen, I'm the man here. It's my job.
You can't say that shit. That brother said code word and have that man have an epileptic seizure. Are you crazy? If you try to stand up to Ness Nitty, she gonna call back the agency and say, this dude is malfunctioning. Do something about him right now before I have him doing the Millie Rock as he vomits on himself.
In the NFL, not yours. I'm going to be the voice on this. So I think the real goal here is just to dirty up the name of the NFL.
Brothers, I cite this movie repeatedly, and I'll probably review it once my website is up. The original Total Recall starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sharon Stone. If you want to understand the concept of establishing the wife as the handler, you can examine that film. Of course, there's another film that recently came out called American Ultra, starring Jesse Eisenberg, where they also showed you the concept of having a strategically placed female there who the asset is made to believe is his quote-unquote girlfriend or his wife, but is actually his handler. It's the same thing over and over again. Ness Nitty is his handler. She's not just some regular radio VJ. She also spoke at the United Nations a few years ago.
That's what he seems to be most into, him and his group, is they want to keep accusing the NFL of being rigged. You won't give me a job, you won't give me a job.
Because they have to put pressure on the NFL from below. Jay-Z's job is now to act as the alter. He's the good cop to Kaepernick's bad cop. Jay-Z's going to do the same thing to the NFL that Kaepernick was trying to do, which is to bring in cultural Marxism, to establish Luciferianism as the overall culture of the NFL, or quote-unquote equality. That's the watered-down term for cultural Marxism. We want to make sure that we have festivals for homosexuals and celebrate feminism and celebrate lesbianism and celebrate transgenderism. That's what Jay-Z is going to bring in. But the first thing that Jay-Z is going to do in tandem with the NFL is have a series of programs that will do the job of re-ingratiating himself with woke Twitter or black Twitter, or so-called black people who might be suspicious of what or why Jay-Z is there for. That's the first thing that they're going to do, is try to restore the trust among so-called blacks. Then they're going to have Jay-Z, at least in my view, most probably have Jay-Z be the face of the return of Colin Kaepernick. Whatever team Jay-Z is directly associated with will most likely be the team that re-signs Kaepernick, assuming that that's a part of the script. If it's not a part of the script, they're still going to have Jay-Z be the face of certain programs that will provide money for so-called black people. Maybe he'll be involved in certain statutory law changes in certain states. He'll get to be the face of that. But they have to bring the trust back to Sean Carter first, especially due to the fact that there's so much doubt in what his motivations are amongst so-called black people on the internet. So they're gonna work on that first. But the real goal is to promote Luciferianism, not only amongst the masses, but also amongst the so-called black masses through Jay-Z. He's a very, very high-level witch/warlock and a high-level Kabbalist.
And so if you let him back in, I think he's going to end up embarrassing some people.
One other team, the Eagles. They've lost a couple of backup quarterbacks. They've got a owner who has been very active, left-leaning. They've already won a Super Bowl, so the pressure is not necessarily on them to the same degree. And they've already given big money to Carson Wentz, so it's not like there's really a quarterback controversy that could possibly exist there. Maybe that's a move that they could be interested in making.
But again, this goes back to what sacrifice you willing to make, and the points that Marcellus and Bucky are talking about, and you were talking about. If you're the backup quarterback, part of your job is helping the starters.
And to not draw attention to yourself.
Yeah, but it's also, it's like, you're part of his preparation. Hey, does he got a guy to watch film with in the morning and talk about what they see?
Yeah.
Is Cap really into that?
Well, he'll have to play that role. Once again, he's an actor. So if he is brought back, he's going to play the good soldier. He's going to allow whoever the starter is to fall on his face. But that might be part of the narrative as well. I believe that if Kaepernick is brought back, it'll be to a team where the starter's not very good. That's why you should look for Jay-Z to try to align himself to a team that does not have a great starter. so that when they do slide Kaepernick in, it does not look too suspicious.
Or will he spend his free time like Eric Reed does, tweeting nonstop about how angry he is?
Yeah.
Eric Reed is just unstable. He's under the programming as well. I have very little doubt about that. That's why he's aligned so closely to Kaepernick. Also remember that he's a member of the same fraternity as Colin Kaepernick. And that one knee salute that the both of them do, which Bill Russell, the all-time great player formerly of the Boston Celtics, also did on the internet, that is a Kappa Alpha Psi pose, if I remember correctly.
Look, it hits me, man. Because, like, walking down Rosecrans in the 80s, Slauson in the 90s, it's real. And then when I hear other people who say, I'm going to take that reality and I'm going to try and champion it, I'm going to try to be a face of it, I'm trying to uplift it and give power to that situation, I say you need to do that responsibly. And right,
they can't do it responsibly, Marcellus Wiley. They can't do it responsibly at all because they don't care enough to do it responsibly. They're playing a role. They're actors. The so-called black plight is purely for monetary gain. That's all it's for. They have no solution. They have no intent on a solution. And as I tell you, brothers, wokeism is a major financial avenue today. People are going woke or acting like they're going woke just to expand their financial portfolio. That's why LeBron James is doing it. That's why Serena Williams is doing it. That's why Odell Beckham is doing it. Nike tells them to be more woke and to be more quote unquote socially conscious so that they can tap into that market of wokeness right now. And Nike is doing it at the behest of the what they call the far leaning lefts in the political sphere. Because right now they're trying to figure out a way to offset what Donald Trump is bringing to the table. So they're desperate right now.
this is irresponsible. You're calling the owners of teams slave owners, and then you're saying the NFL is about systemic oppression. Do you even know what the definition of systemic oppression is? It has to be a group. It has to be a multiples.
I agree with you, brother, but we have to understand they're playing out the concept of the proletariat versus the ruling class. They're utilizing Leninist/Marxist tactics to try to equal out. That's why I state the term equality, quote unquote equality, that's a buzz term now, similar to homophobe or misogynist or racist per se. That's a term that gets thrown around irresponsibly, but the intent is to synchronize the proletariat with the ruling class. They're doing it in the NFL. And that's why you have all these people calling everybody a slave master and an oppressor, so on and so forth. Everybody loves to play the slave now. There's never been more appealing to be a slave or to act like you were a slave.
Colin Kaepernick's out the league and he's blackballed. I am understanding that. What group, what peoples, what multitude that has been oppressed by the NFL? Name them. Eric Reed is getting a check from the NFL and then talk about the systemic oppression. And then you're taking a plea bargain with an NDA, which you can't even talk about, but then you say we're going to continue to fight. You weren't fighting in trial. Where's the exposures of this? So, look.
There's no need for him to fight in trial, or there was no need for him to fight during the trial because there was nothing to fight. That whole collusion shit, that was just a way for him to keep his name out there until they could figure out a way to put him aside and prep for Jay-Z to come on. That's all that ever was in the first place. A way to hem up the owners and remove him out of the picture so that they could introduce Jay-Z down the line.
From the real, so you ain't gonna check my card. And then I played in the league.
Matter of fact, let me rewind this back a little bit because right now the brother got a good flow.
Nope. I am understanding that. What group, what peoples, what multitude that has been oppressed by the NFL? Name them. Eric Reed is getting a check from the NFL and then...
I've been saying that for the longest time. I have no idea why the wokeities on the internet suddenly believe that the NFL is oppressing them. I mean, give me a fucking break. But our people right now, we're separated into so many factions based on the confusion that we have because of a lack of understanding of our culture. So-called black people are being taught to embrace atheism, i.e. worship yourself as a god or find a replacement for the actual spirit that we're supposed to be venerating. So now they're looking to anything to blame. Because when you don't understand things from the spiritual perspective, you have to try to break things down carnally. That leads to frustration. And that's why the wokeities are always frustrated. They're always angry.
about is systemic oppression. And then you're taking a plea bargain with an NDA, which you can't even talk about, but then you say we're going to continue to fight. You want fighting in trial. Where's the exposures of this? So look.
There's never going to be a real fight because their goal is not to revolt. The goal is to figure out a way to get validation from the Caucasian, the super liberal Caucasian specifically, pardon me.
I'm from the real, so you ain't gonna check my card. And then I played in the league, and I know how it goes. It's not just who's the best guy, big, fast, strong, get on the field, run around, draw it in the dirt. There's a professionalism to this too. And it doesn't mean you gotta just sit there and abide by all what the owners and GMs and coaches are saying. But understand, if you are the man, then you have a different set of the rules when you're not. And he didn't play his game right.
We need a mic so you can drop it.
No, coming up.
We need a mic so you can drop it. Good job, Negro. In all seriousness, though, Marcellus Wiley did a very good job with his little diatribe there. He touched on everything that needed to be touched on, especially pertaining to the aspect of how strange it is to have people who are of multiple ethnicities trying to dictate to so-called black people what our issues are or what our plight is or what our solutions should be. That's how you know that there's something rotten in Denmark here. Okay, so now, brothers, right here, we're going to continue where we left off pertaining to the topic of, do multiracial people have identity issues? Marcellus Wiley had a great flow on the topic. I mean, as he should. He was raised in an environment and in such a way that he should have a proper stranglehold on exactly what the various dynamics of this issue actually are and why they're manifesting themselves in the way that they are. So we're just going to continue. This was another segment in which he went in even harder on Kaepernick and Ness Nitty, Eric Reed, Kenny Stills, etc.
All right, welcome back. Whitlock and Wiley. Jim Jackson's back with us. Time now for Darnell's question of the day. All right, take it away, Darnell.
Yes, sir. Let's talk about Eric Reed, who continued his attack on the NFL this weekend. Check this out.
When has Jay-Z ever taken a knee to come out and tell us that we're past kneeling? Yes, he's done a lot of great work, a lot of great social justice work, but for you to get paid to go into an NFL press conference and say that...
Kind of like how you're getting paid, right, bro?
That's kneeling. Again, asinine. Players Coalition 2.0. He got paid to take the bullets that he's taking now.
So your plan is what, Eric Reed? The kneeling stops when? You said the kneeling stops when police brutality stops, right? Or does it stop when Kaepernick gets a job? Help me out. You gonna keep standing on one knee until your husband gets back in the league?
We're not having it.
Not surprisingly, Kaepernick backed up his protest, buddy.
And of course, I'm semi-joking about Eric Reed being Colin Kaepernick's husband or his other wife. He's really his son, especially in the trinity of Asar, Aset, and Haru. But his inordinate devotion to Colin Kaepernick, he's a contributor to the misunderstanding that he claims people have in regards to what the protest is about, because all he talks about is Kaepernick. He doesn't really talk about what his solutions are for the issue that he claims he's protesting against, because you just can't expect the Caucasian man to have solutions. Part of being respected as a man is that you're able to come up with solutions and not just look to someone else to come up with them for you.
Tweeted out, quote, "My brothers Eric Reed, Kenny Stills, Albert Wilson continue to fight for the people, even in the face of death threats."
I also meant to mention this. You'll always notice that when Kaepernick or Ness Nitty or Eric Reed speak, they always talk about the people. That's another tenet of Marxism. They'll always use that term, the people, because they claim to be for the people. In reality, that term people is just coded for proletariat, the worker. That's why I'm telling you, brothers, what they're doing right now is culturally Marxist. It's Leninist. They're using the same tactics that were used to establish quote-unquote communism.
They have never moved past the people and continue to put their beliefs into action. Stay strong, brothers. Do you think these guys are in a big mistake going after Jay-Z?
Huge.
I don't think they're making a big mistake going after Jay-Z because it's part of their brand. Their brand is that they're the workers fighting against the big guy. When in all reality, Eric Reed and Colin Kaepernick are just part of this narrative. They're part of this theater that we're watching. which is meant to be a process through which Jay-Z ultimately becomes the winner. He's going to be the face of the restoration of Colin Kaepernick, I believe, in some way, shape, or form. And even if he isn't, he's going to be the middleman for a lot of the programs that the NFL creates. He is the quote-unquote black Frank Sinatra. He's the chairman of the board. So in the same way that Frank Sinatra was the plug, he was the middleman between the White House and the mafia, the entertainment industry and the White House, Jay-Z is going to be that same guy. He's going to play that same role in the sports world. That's why he has Rock Nation, and he's basically the middleman between the black aspect of the entertainment industry and the masses of people at large all across the world.
Again, an enormous mistake. They've elected themselves the gatekeepers of what is and isn't black, and they're just not qualified.
Boom. One, Jay-Z told you what he thinks of Kaepernick truly through his actions. He didn't go to Kaepernick to say, can I? Should I? He just did it. You know why?
Because he's 007. That's why. And Colin Kaepernick is a lower level agent. Jay-Z does not have to go and tell Colin Kaepernick or ask him for permission. Jay-Z gets his orders from higher ups, not from Colin Kaepernick or Ness Nitty.
As he said, we're beyond kneeling. You can keep kneeling. I'm going to take this baton from you as you're kneeling and now translate this into the two things that are most important in this whole conversation, which is the money and the power that can give the resources back to those who are underprivileged, underserved, and voiceless. And
nobody's voiceless in this society. I've already stated that. That's part of the victimization program. And as I've already stated in other videos about this topic, even though I respect the intellect of Marcellus Wiley, he's a fan. By his own admission, he's a huge hip-hop head, and he admires Jay-Z. Jay-Z's just a pawn like everybody else. He's a very intelligent pawn, but that's all he is. He's a proxy. His job is to represent the interests of higher-ups, most likely overseas, most likely of the multi-billionaire variety and of the Luciferian, borderline satanic variety. When we look at this still shot here, look at how happy Roger Goodell is. Does he look like someone who's working in a partnership with another person? Or does he look like someone who has to work under another person? Roger Goodell has to report to Jay-Z when it comes to this initiative, believe it or not.
that's been lost right now because of Kaepernick and the gestures that him and Eric Reed and Nessa are all following.
It's good to see somebody finally mentioning Nessa as much as she needs to be mentioned. Because as I told you brothers years ago, she's the person who's telling Kaepernick what to do.
The thing, Jay-Z is smart. You don't become Marcy Projects to billionaire and not be smart.
You don't go from Marcy Projects to billionaire in the entertainment industry without being willing to do whatever it takes to get to the next level. And I mean whatever it takes.
Spidey sense that can read this. And Jay-Z is guilty of
a lot of things.
Giving Kaepernick a pass the same way I was guilty of giving him a pass. I was conflicted. From day one, I was against him kneeling. Because I said, get up and get those resources, because where we're from, your kneeling at kickoff has nothing to do with our situation.
Not only that, but tell me where kneeling has ever had anything to do with having a ruling class mentality or being in authority or demanding respect. When has getting on one knee or two knees ever been symbolic of respect and demanding honor? I need one of Kaepernick's followers to help me out with that. Elucidate me, please. Tell me where getting on one knee has ever shown that you were in a commanding position, since he's supposed to be a leader. That's how you know he's not a leader. He's getting down on one knee like a slave.
Unless you translate that, materialize it, and monetize it. Jay-Z waited long enough and finally said, I gotta step past this dude to get this right.
Well, he was told you're going to step past this dude. They've been working together on this for well over a year now, Jay-Z and the NFL. And Jay-Z has been trying to show the NFL what type of power he has by telling other prominent black artists to now perform for the NFL, to let them know that he can do even greater things than that.
This is an identity issue. You know why the identity of this movement has been lost? You know why the identity has been lost in this platform of kneeling, and what does it really mean? Because the identity of those who are leading it has always been in question.
Agreed. Once again, biracial, multiracial people, they cannot lead so-called black people. Sorry. And I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of Negroes in my comment section, especially a lot of pro-blackity blacks, talking about what about Malcolm X, what about this person, what about that person. At the end of the day, in order for you to lead so-called black people, you cannot be multiracial, multi-ethnic. You cannot have any doubts about your lineage. Malcolm X, even though he was multi-ethnic, he did not have doubts about his lineage. He did not struggle to fit in because he was a natural leader. And even with all that, his message was not the appropriate message for our people. And I'm sure that a lot of cats will get upset by that as well. That's why he ended up having to separate from the organization that he was a member of and trying to figure out where to go from there. The solution for our problems is the reestablishing of the culture that is intrinsically linked with our nation of people. And that has to do with the scriptures and the restoration of language, law, land, so on and so forth. If you don't have those things, you could never have respect or self-respect. And those things are not going to be fully reestablished until the fall of this global kingdom, which is in the process